Welcome to our channel. Today we're diving into the dark side of medicine, a place where the Hippocratic Oath seems less like a sacred vow and more like a takeout menu. We're talking about the bottom of the barrel, the absolute worst of the worst, the 10 doctors who make Dr. Nick Riviera look like a Nobel Prize contender. We're going to journey through history, unearthing tales of malpractice, negligence, and outright evil that would make your blood pressure spike faster than a triple espresso. Buckle up, because some of these stories are more shocking than finding out your dentist collects Beanie Babies unironically. So, if you're ready to question everything you thought you knew about the medical profession, grab your tongue depressors and let's get started. Meet Dr. Michael Swango, a man who turned bedside manner into a nightmare. He charmed his way into hospitals and out of accusations. Patients mysteriously fell ill or died after his injections. Swango moved from job to job, leaving a trail of death. Eventually, he was caught and convicted of multiple murders. The true number of his victims remains unknown. Next up on our grim roster is a man whose name has become synonymous with medical evil, Dr. Harold Shipman. Shipman wasn't just some rogue surgeon with shaky hands and a disregard for patient consent. This man was a full-blown serial killer, and we're not talking about a couple of unfortunate souls who met an untimely end. We're talking about an estimated 250 victims, making him one of the most prolific serial killers in recorded history. His weapon of choice? Morphine. Lots and lots of morphine. Shipman would visit his elderly patients, many of whom trusted him implicitly, and administer lethal doses of morphine, claiming it was simply pain relief. And the worst part? He would then falsify their medical records to make it look like natural causes. It was only after a particularly brazen attempt to forge a will that the jig was up, and the full, horrifying extent of his crimes came to light. Shipman operated undetected for years, preying on the vulnerable and leaving a trail of grief and unanswered questions in his wake. Let's be honest, when you think of dangerous medical practices, you probably picture scalpels going where they shouldn't, or maybe a rogue botched Botox injection, right? Well, our next doctor on this list decided to forego the surgical route and instead weaponize something far more basic: food, or rather the lack thereof. Meet Dr. Linda Hazzard, a woman who, despite having zero medical training, managed to convince people she was a health guru. Her specialty? A little something she liked to call the fasting cure. Now, intermittent fasting, that's one thing, but Hazzard's version was less about mindful eating and more about, well, not eating at all. We're talking weeks of subsisting on nothing but meager sips of tomato juice and the occasional teaspoon of orange juice. Unsurprisingly, this radical approach to wellness had some, shall we say, less than desirable side effects. Patients, weakened and emaciated, often succumbed to their ailments, or perhaps more accurately, to starvation. Hazzard was eventually convicted of manslaughter and her license revoked, proving that sometimes the best medicine is actually, actual medicine. It all came to a head when a wealthy heiress died under Hazzard's care, and let's just say the family wasn't entirely satisfied with the whole toxin-purging explanation. Chapter 4. The Ice Pick Lobotomy, Dr. Walter Freeman. If you're squeamish about sharp objects, skip ahead. Dr. Walter Freeman brought us the lobotomy, a horrifyingly imprecise procedure. His weapon of choice? An ice pick, inserted through the eye socket. Freeman believed scrambling the frontal lobe could cure mental illnesses. He traveled the country in his lobotomobile, leaving behind emotionally blunted patients. A dark chapter in medical history, a chilling reminder of unchecked experimentation. Chapter 5. The Artificial Trachea, Dr. Paolo Macchiarini. Our next doctor, well, he's a bit of a showman, a maverick, a man who dared to dream big, even if those dreams involved building artificial tracheas that, spoiler alert, didn't actually work. This is Dr. Paolo Macchiarini, a man whose story is a cautionary tale of ambition, ego, and a shocking disregard for the scientific method. See, Macchiarini burst onto the medical scene promising to revolutionize organ transplantation with his groundbreaking synthetic trachea. The problem? His miracle cure wasn't exactly ready for prime time, or any time really. Macchiarini implanted these artificial tracheas into patients, often with little to no preclinical testing, essentially using them as guinea pigs in his grand experiment. And the results were, to put it mildly, disastrous. Patients suffered severe complications, the plastic tracheas often collapsing or failing altogether, leading to, you guessed it, a string of fatalities. Macchiarini was a master manipulator, a Teflon surgeon whose charm and charisma allowed him to deflect blame and continue his work, much to the detriment of his patients. It was a classic case of too much hype, too little science, and a whole lot of tragedy. His story serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked ambition in the medical field. Chapter 6. Dr. Death. 2.0 – John Bodkin Adams. Our next entry takes us to the English countryside, where Dr. John Bodkin Adams harbored a dark secret. Adams had a relaxed attitude towards end-of-life care. Known for his lavish lifestyle, many of his patients met their end under his watch. Over 160 suspicious deaths, many wealthy widows left him gifts in their wills. His weapon of choice? Painkillers. Adams believed in alleviating suffering, even if it meant ending lives prematurely. Despite numerous investigations, Adams evaded serious charges. Acquitted of murder, the whispers of Dr. Death followed him until his dying day. The true extent of his crimes remains a matter of debate. Adams' story is a chilling reminder of potential abuse in the medical profession. Chapter 7. Surgical Bacteriology. Dr. Henry Cotton. Now, our next doctor on this list was a firm believer in the adage, when in doubt, cut it out. This is Dr. Henry Cotton, a man whose enthusiasm for surgery bordered on the, shall we say, excessive. Cotton had a theory that mental illness was caused by, wait for it, focal infections. According to Cotton, if you were feeling a bit down in the dumps, a bit melancholic, a bit prone to, schizophrenia, it was all because of a rogue tooth abscess or a pesky inflamed colon. And the solution? Remove it. Remove it all. Cotton performed thousands of surgeries on patients, yanking out teeth, removing tonsils, extracting spleens, even plucking out colons with the zeal of a kid on a Halloween sugar rush. Patients died, were left disfigured, or, in a cruel irony, suffered even worse mental health issues after their unnecessary surgeries. Cotton's legacy is a stark reminder that sometimes, the best medicine is knowing when to put down the scalpel and, maybe pick up a book on psychology instead. His story highlights the dangers of medical hubris and the unshakable belief in one's own theories. Chapter 8. Our next entry on this list is a man whose actions had far-reaching consequences, fueling a dangerous movement and undermining public health in the process. This is Andrew Wakefield, a man who went from disgraced doctor to anti-vaccine hero, and all it took was a healthy dose of scientific fraud. Wakefield claimed to have found a link between the MMR vaccine and autism. The problem? His research was riddled with errors, manipulated data, and some seriously questionable ethical practices. But facts, as they often do, were no match for a good conspiracy theory. Wakefield's paper, published in the prestigious medical journal The Lancet, who later retracted it faster than you can say herd immunity, sparked a panic. Parents, understandably concerned for their children's well-being, began refusing vaccines and thus began the anti-vaccine movement we know and loathe today. The consequences of Wakefield's actions have been devastating. Measles, a disease that was once considered eradicated in many countries, made a roaring comeback. Wakefield's story is a stark reminder that in the age of misinformation, a single lie, especially one wrapped in the veneer of scientific legitimacy, can have deadly consequences. Chapter 9. Our penultimate entry takes us to the darkest chapter in human history, to the depths of Nazi Germany, where one man's twisted experiments became a chilling symbol of medical evil. This is Josef Mengele, the angel of death of Auschwitz, a man synonymous with cruelty and sadism. Mengele wasn't just a doctor, he was a monster cloaked in a white coat. He saw prisoners as lab rats, subjects for his twisted will. His legacy is a chilling reminder of unchecked power and human depravity. Chapter 10. Our final entry is a stark reminder of the terrifying consequences of medical incompetence. Dr. Christopher Duntsch, a neurosurgeon with a god complex, left patients worse off, if they survived at all. His surgeries were more like butchery, paralyzing patients and leaving instruments inside bodies. How did he operate for so long? Arrogance, negligence, and a failing system. We must remain vigilant, questioning authority, and demanding better care. Outro. Well, there you have it, folks, the 10 worst doctors of all time, a rogues gallery of medical malpractice, negligence, and outright evil that would make even the most stoic among us squirm. It's enough to make you want to swear off hospitals altogether, but remember, for every Dr. Death lurking in the shadows, There are countless dedicated, skilled, and compassionate medical professionals working tirelessly to heal the sick and alleviate suffering. But it's important to remember that even in a profession built on trust and compassion, there are bad apples, people who exploit that trust for their own gain, or who simply lack the competence to fulfill their oaths. So, the next time you visit a doctor, remember the stories of these medical miscreants. Ask questions, do your research, and trust your gut. After all, when it comes to your health, a little bit of skepticism can go a long way. Thanks for watching, and stay safe.